creativity, the ability to transcend traditional ideas through the use of imagination. Since the beginning of recorded history, creative works have stirred the soul and inspired the masses. What is this magical mystery? How do we turn that initial spark into something tangible? How can we apply it in our own lives? Join me as we attempt to answer these and other questions as we delve inside the creative spirit.
JD Arichi is an etherealist artist who creates visionary spiritual art. JD attended the Art Institute of Philadelphia and later trained in Lilydale with spirit artist and medium Bonnie White. While attending a guided meditation circle in 2001, JD experienced an awakening that would change his life forever. What started as pastel and charcoal drawings has expanded into digital art and now his own deck titled The Ethereal Oracle. JD also teaches classes and workshops, which he calls Lessons in How to See. So please welcome to the very first episode of Inside the Creative Spirit, JD Arichi. Hi, JD. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to start out, let's go right to the beginning from your childhood. Do you have what was the earliest memories that you have of art or being exposed to art, or any childhood memories that you may have surrounding art?
Art was always something that I did. It was just a constant. It was what I did when I was bored. It was what I did when I got sent to my room. It was like my go-to thing. Like in high school, it was just a way to kind of withdraw. And I did a lot of stuff, but I wasn't like it was all just about expression. It wasn't like I didn't just have these neat ideas. It was literally just like venting through pictures. It wasn't until after I left art school and actually started on a spiritual path that it turned the direction that it is now.
So when did you know that you wanted to be an artist as a child? Was there ever a point, so it was just always sort of a hobby, or did you ever think that I want to be an artist when I grow up?
When I was very young, I think my first game plan was I wanted to design cars because I always had a thing for cars. I think I inherited that from my dad. And so I wanted to be a car designer. But then, of course, going through teenage years, the whole idea of playing music and being in a band was was what I wanted. And I wound up going to art school as more or less a backup plan.
Sounds like me. So you mentioned your dad. Now, is there a family background of art, or were they supportive of your talent, or what was your family like? Was anybody creative in your family?
Creative, yes. Not many that I know as artists. My couple of cousins that are, but not like direct family. But as far as support, it was always incredibly supported. I'm very blessed in that sense. The music not so much wasn't as smiled on, but yeah, when it came to art, everything, any opportunity it was capable of being provided it was really I was fortunate in that sense. But more or less, the artist in my core family.
Great. So are there any artists who inspire you, or you think it would be, or you would count as an influence?
There's quite a few, actually. And, way back when I was younger, I never really had much appreciation for art, oddly enough. I didn't care for the greats at all. My strongest influences were the guys that would airbrush T-shirts on the Jersey Shore, and in like 20 minutes, they make something that looks like a photograph. To me, that was incredible, and so it was always, I guess, the non-known artists that always struck at me. And then as I developed and as kind of walked on this path my own and finding my own way of doing things and really stepping out of some of the blocks that I had before as far as creating, it's still kind of like that. I mean, of course, I always loved MC Escher and Dali. Which are two almost opposite extremes in some senses. And, but now, like, some of my favorites is I forget the gentleman's name. He does chalk. he does chalk paintings on the ground, but he's just an absolute master of perspective. I like the thinking behind it too. In just finding ways of doing things that no one else has thought of, or just really kind of like making it kind of, I don't want to say it's playing with your mind, but it kind of is. It's taking something flat and making it look, incredibly 3D. That to me is astounding.
Yeah, those are some of my favorites too, Escher and Dolly, and I also like Suzanne Belay, which I feel like your art kind of resembles hers a little. What's your favorite medium to do art with at this time or in the past, and what are you doing now as far as what mediums do you use? I know you mentioned pastel and charcoal, but you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, starting way back when, of course, drawing is always convenient, pens, paper. Some of my best works were in high school were always done on lined paper. And I think there's a lot of psychology to that as well. But in towards high school, I was focused more on airbrushing because of the realism you could get out of it, even though I didn't quite have the discipline to get there. But when I started on the spiritual path, and I knew I needed to get away from the structure, trying to recreate. So I went with something that I thought was messy, and it was literally with the intent of making a mess. So that's when I got my first set of chalk pastels. I'd done chalk a little bit before, but never actually worked with pastels. I liked that it was messy and that I couldn't control it as much as I wanted to. And of course I was doing the charcoals, but over the years, of course, that developed. And one of the things I found that's a real blessing for me is with the chalk is you can only do so much with it before it won't take any more color. You could try and go black over white and it just barely shows up. So it gets to a point where it has to be done. Because when it would come to painting or airbrushing, you could always throw another layer on it and I would just never finish anything.
Difference between drawing something from you and then drawing something from your imagination or from spirit, and when did that start happening for you?
That started happening, it all came together at once as far as my choices to kind of focus on my life being more than just what I did for a living. And most of my experience was in customer service. So it came together like literally simultaneously. Like as soon as I started taking foot on a spiritual path in any sense, and looking into things and opening up to things, I immediately lost my day job. And in a guided meditation, I was shown that I was supposed to do art. And a part of me, up until then, I never really accepted myself as an artist. I was, yeah, I can draw a little. That would be my response when people would ask me. But because of all these other things that were happening that I really couldn't ignore, I had to step into it and really just see what happens. And I did so almost reluctantly. But when I started getting the feedback from the people I was doing the work for, that's what really kind of kept it going and has been all these years.
Who's trying to do it like on their own, what you do, or aspires to do what you do? What is your process? Do you see it in your mind first, or does it just kind of flow right through you? Or could you describe a little bit of that for us?
I don't see it in my mind first. I visually, I'm very creative. I can see lots and lots of things. You could throw out some weird image and I will literally see a picture of it, but I don't create what I see in my mind. That to me is really difficult. I'd like to be able to, but it's not something I've worked towards yet. The way that the intuitive work works is I open up to it and kind of let it happen. And when I say that, like in the charcoals, I literally just kind of gaze at the paper and see like, okay, a little shadow here, a little shadow there. And over the years, that's developed as well, where I look at the paper, I actually start to see stuff. But it's not solid images. It's not like a complete picture. It's more like a piece here, a piece there, but I don't stop to think about it. And that is what I find is key, not only in doing the intuitive drawings, but in doing readings in general or doing any kind of intuitive work. I think we get stuck in life on a lot of things where we just try and really analyze it without letting anything flow. And especially working with spirit, it needs to flow through. You can't just control it.
Now, you brought up the charcoal drawings. I'm going to pull up on my screen, and we're going to show it to the people watching the video later. You did send a couple of drawings. Let's look at this charcoal drawing that you sent me. This might be a good time to do it.
Okay.
You've done a couple for me, and there's just so many cool things that are in these drawings. But the one you sent me, we're going to put up on the screen now. Obviously, the first thing I see is the face, and it has a very fairy, fae-like quality to it. And then also there's like a flower and maybe a fairy in front and a book and a tree. I mean, it's very organic, very fairy-ish. Do you want to talk about a little bit what you perceive this to be or your perception of it, as well as the person you created it for, or really anything you want to say about it?
One of the things, for starter, I don't remember about the interaction with the person it's for once I take the picture and load it up. I do quite a few of these, so trying to remember that doesn't really help. And plus, if they order another one later on, I don't want to remember what I said last time. First, I start with the placement. The placement in my drawings, at least the way I perceive them, and I think everyone perceives things differently. So if they have their own system, of course, they would apply that, even though I did the drawing. But for me, the bottom is the physical world, actual body, hardcore earth, so-called reality. The top is the spiritual world. And then the in-between is literally the layers of the person it's for. The left is the past, and then moving towards the right is the future. So depending on the placement and the movement in the drawing is very significant. Like in this particular drawing, down between the mental, emotional, and the physical world, because the mental emotional is about the middle, body, mind, spirit. We have what I see is a butterfly. It also is a flower. So it's a blossoming. It's also a new beginning. Then because the face that's in it is all the way, it's a dominant amount of the picture, but it's mostly in the spiritual and mental emotional world. So this kind of has a lot to do with perception and the way that the person sees himself. And from that, there's like a tree. It's almost growing out of his mouth and like a branch. And that to me has a lot to do with things being spoken and growth from that. So kind of messages that for them to I don't want to say messages per se, but things they need to share because their conscious mind is so in tune with their spirit. And then the books, potentially this could be someone who could do some writing and people could get value in the writing because they do share intellectually from spirit, and down in the physical world that plays out in books. So whether they wanted to do something with communication and doing it audibly because the growth is coming from the mouth, or they wanted to put it in the books, but either way, it's with things they learn from books. So it's kind of a combination on that. But the big significance is new beginnings of bringing through what they're able to consciously understand into the physical world.
On this one, I see that leaf from the tree. I see the tree you're speaking of. And to me, it feels like that's a tear coming out of the eye. And, you drew a book for me. Well, the first time I ever had a reading from you. I'm sure you don't remember, but you did. And I ended up writing a couple books since then. So you did inspire me to do that.
That's terrific.
Okay, let's move on to the next one. I believe this may be one of your digital arts. It's the Carrie, the artwork done for Carrie with the Native American sitting in the cross-legged and the butterfly eyes and everything. You want to talk a little bit about this piece?
That was one of my first digital pieces that I'd done. It's a style that I came through a friend of mine years ago, but was never really drawn to. As an artist, I was always hesitant to go into the digital aspect. And then I wound up with the tools in order to do them in my lap, pretty much, and started experimenting. So this is actually a piece that was done for a friend of mine. And as you can see, there's this really strong but calm figure in the center, not really big, but focused there, very wise feeling. And it's sitting in, he's sitting, or she, a lot of my images tend to be
androgynous.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking for, androgynous. And I kind of like that. And I like how different people will see things different ways. So we have the being in the middle and kind of sitting in front of, even though it doesn't look like a piano, but to me it's like a keyboard, like it's like this musical instrument. And with the different aspects of things going on, it really, I forgot the way I put it to her. I explained, I said something like, I said, sing, just sing. And it was all about her needing to express herself vocally, literally in song, because there's a lot of power to that. And these may be just small examples of what I recall from her interaction, but it really hit home for her. It was something really significant, and that's kind of what I go for.
Yeah. I like that you said that the tools just fell in your lap. I think that's so awesome that the universe works in that way. And secondly, you said it reminds you of an instrument, and this is so synchronistic because I saw Stevie Wonder playing a harpeggi on the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, and I've been looking into these alternative keyboard instruments, and there is one that looks very similar to this. I'll have to find out. I'll put it up on the screen, but it's this odd instrument, and it's these metal these metal things that stick out. I'll have to show you, and it looks.
That is really cool, and that's one of the things I try and explain in my workshops. That if you're doing a drawing for someone, and it speaks to not questioning what comes through. But if you're doing a drawing for someone else, that you may not have the reference material in your brain that they do. So therefore there may be something very specific that they need to see. But if you sit there and try and analyze it and say it is this or it isn't that, or I've never seen that before, or this doesn't look like anything I understand, you limit it to basically what you're able to perceive. So by keeping it open, it's a real emphasis on keeping things open so you can create something that's more specific that you would have never known about.
That's true in any kind of like psychic readings or anything. You never know. I say the weirdest thing sometimes, but people come back and say, "Oh, remember you said that weird thing?" Well, guess what? Okay, so let's look on to the last one I want to look at mine too. But first, we also are going to take a look at the one of Misty. I believe this is one of your chalk pastels. And wow, what energy pouring out of the root chakra on this one. That would be the first thing that draws me in. What is your feelings on this?
There's a lot going on there. I was very happy when I did this one. There's a lot of how do I explain, like an aquatic feel, like a mermaid kind of vibe to it, which that has a significance because the thing with mermaids is that they're two different things. They're almost like amphibians, and the aspect that they're fluid in the water, which represents not only emotion but the flow of things and letting things flow. And water is one of those elements that can seem very passive, it'll sit level, but it can also be very powerful over time, as we see, like in erosion and things like that. But anyway, getting back to that, so the aspect of the mermaid is kind of this in between, like working in two worlds. And then there's the burst of colors coming out towards her tail, and it's just the way I was seeing that is a real an explosion of energy, like it just burst of different energy and kind of an opening up. And the interesting thing with her hair is kind of floating around almost, even though she does have very aquatic theme to her, she doesn't seem like, I don't feel she's in the water. And it's kind of a stepping out of the water, stepping out of these emotions to have this. And the burst is moving towards the future because it's towards the right side is facing it. So, and the hair branching out with these little leaf buds on them. So to me, that's also representative, but that's also towards the top of the picture, which is spiritual growth.
It looks like fire. They look like little flames. So it's almost like fire and water together.
Yeah. Really interesting, even for me as the artist, because even though I see all these things in it, I don't necessarily see them while I'm doing it or while I'm thinking about which colors to use or things like that. And it's kind of like a draw to it. And then to see how it weaves in and out of meanings without me having any conscious understanding of it, or acknowledgement of it.
That's really cool. I want to take a look at the last one you did for me, the pastel. And I had gone through a lot of health problems. I want to read first. I took notes of my impressions. And then my cousin also looked at it. And then you gave me some stuff too. I want to read some of my impressions that when I first saw it. I put wise woman / wise elder, sick, weak, hiding, because I had just come over this major health thing. Re-emerging, third eye opening, referring to the jewel up there, obviously. Feathered hair, question mark, because I cut off all my hair and donated, and I wasn't sure what hairstyle I was doing, so it could be something insane like that too, like not even all that spiritual. Third eye, transforming, smoke coming from her mouth. Inside the eye, I thought I saw a crystal skull inside the eye. Sleep, dream time, wind, wrapping around my face to protect from the wind. I couldn't tell if she was retreating or emerging outward. Then the feathers reminded me of like a bird, and the white face was an egg, so I thought it might be like giving birth. And my cousin looked at it, and it said, she said the jewel in the third eye was the thing that really got her right away. Psychic. The hair feathering for hidden and protection. The covering part of the eye, not fully open, full potential not being realized. Native American, powerful wisdom. Going counterclockwise against the flow, fighting something. Spirituality because of the light from the jewel. That's what she came up with. What do you feel about this image, or what were your thoughts, if you can remember?
Well, the strongest impression that I had about it was the swirling motion, the just things blowing all around. The other thing was her eyes. Of course, there's the third eye, or as you saw it as the jewel, coming off the crown into the third eye position. But the eyes really struck me. And the thing with the eyes is they're very gentle, but they're fierce at the same time. They're very intense. These were one of the things, like when I'm working on it, almost just amazes me how they come out, And so anyway, back to the movement. But the contrast of the swirling, almost like this is wind blowing all these different directions and different influences going in all these different directions, yet the face is still calm and determined, moving forward. And like you said, as far as the coming out of the mouth, the breath or the wind, there's an aspect to that tied into that swirling motion, almost like it's being created. But even though it can be viewed as obstacles, it's also it's to get you in the right direction, just like the feathers, or what would appear to be the hair, is blowing all around, but it's also keeping that crown protected. So it's kind of like one of those things. To me, it really speaks to a very strong trust in the way things come through, and that things come out, even though we'd like things to be differently. But if they're too smooth, then there's purpose behind everything, and we can't ever really assume that we know it all. So kind of like this swirling around motion is protecting things that need to be protected without your focus on protecting them, yet keeping them open at the same time. If that makes sense. Like that's a little out there. It's kind of a big concept.
It did make a lot of sense to where I was at that time, especially. I want to kind of change gears, and I have a few questions that I want to finish up with. Like, I want to know, like, what inspires you now and before, or when you were younger and now, and how is it different, or how has it changed over time?
A lot. It can be anything, and sometimes nothing works. When I'm doing a piece for someone, to me, it's a being of service to them. Even though we have arrangements for it, but it's meant to be a tool. And so I guess I see it as helping, in a way, being a conduit in a sense. So that motivates me. But it isn't usually until after I'm done with the picture and it's delivered and I get the response that I feel good about it. As an artist, I'm hypercritical about my own work. I think a lot of artists are. I think that's natural. I think that's what makes us strive for more. But especially doing it with this, it's like, I'm kind of combining my own highs and lows of abilities versus what's meant to be seen. So it sometimes can make some interesting pictures.
You kind of mentioned, you kind of answered this before, but I have a question. If art is your only form of creative expression, you said you were a musician like me too, and how is it the same with music and art, and how is it different?
For me personally, music was more, it's where I really was more spontaneous. I didn't try and make anything. I just let myself go to town. And that's why I don't, I'm what I'd call a closet musician, because I don't actively do anything with it. But like when I would play the guitar, I would just let myself go. And yeah, it sounded like noise a lot of the time. But I think for me, it was also healing. So there's other aspects to it. I think it's just that creative juices flowing.
Do you think creativity can be taught, or is it something innate?
I don't think creativity is a skill, but I don't think it's exclusively a gift either. I mean, it is just like anything is a gift, but I think creativity, like intuition, is a matter of opening up. As a matter of fact, my philosophy is that creativity and intuition if are not the same thing, they are so intertwined you can't pull them apart. And I noticed that over the years that, I think I have this creative idea, and sure enough, there's a meaning for it. And it's really interesting to see that play out. But I think anyone has both the intuition and the creative aspect. I think part of the thing is letting go of the controls that keep them from operating.
I agree 100%. Okay, this is the big question. Where does it come from?
That's kind of that is a big question. I haven't found a particular way of putting that I'm comfortable with. What I do emphasize when I mention to people, because I do my drawings and my art remotely a lot of the time, where I'm not in that person's presence. I'm not connecting to them. I'm connecting for them. And the next question that comes up is, what do I connect to? And I really don't have a specific definition for that. Any of the ideas that feel correct, are too big for my ego to handle. You know what I mean? So, and I don't want to sound like, I'd like to say source, whatever you consider that to be. I don't identify with particular guardian angels or anything like that, at least not consciously.
Is there a moment where you knew that something really transcendent had happened?
In someone's drawing?
At any time in the creative process.
I can't think of a specific example, but I'll definitely say yes. A lot of times it's like, and speaking again to the flow, it's like dipping your toe in the water to see, to check it out, and getting taken away by the current. And it's almost, I don't want to call it impulsive, but something along that direction, where it's just this drive to go forward. And I think it's fleeting too. I think if you don't jump on it sometimes, or at least don't keep that process, just like the river flowing down, it's going to keep going, and there'll be more. It's not like a lot of us get stuck on, I've seen people get stuck on, they lost this one thing or this one idea or whatever. I believe all the ideas are out there. It's just a matter of who does it first.
Yeah. Do you have any advice for up-and-comers or people that would maybe want to follow in your footsteps? What advice would you give somebody?
Probably the best advice I could give them, a good friend of mine gave me, is to create bad art. The reason being, once in a while as artists, we do something we're happy with. And I have found myself in the past stuck because I didn't want to do the next one because I didn't know if it would live up to the last one. And a friend of mine simply said, so do a bad one. Just that simply. And I think when you create, even if you do something that's an absolute mess one day, the next piece could be your next masterpiece. So I think doing it, just continuing to do it in spite of the fear, in spite of those restrictions.
Well, that's a great answer. Okay, do you have any final thoughts, and what would you like to give everybody your website and how to get a hold of you, and anything else that you'd like to share as far as things that you're doing and how people can get involved?
My website is www.infinitecreations.net. Of course, you can find me on Facebook at Infinite Creations by JD. Also, you can find pictures and images of my ethereal oracle deck, which are all originally chalk pastel pieces that I've done for different people. And there's much more information on that on my website, which of course you can order from it there. I also host workshops, which I post on not only Facebook, but my events page, where I teach anyone to do intuitive drawing. And the way I changed the description to be is that it's an intuitive workshop that we play with chalk instead of calling it a drawing workshop, because most people who don't think they know how to draw will shy away from it. And it's actually the opposite that usually happens.
I think that's awesome. Okay, JD, thank you so much for joining me for the very first episode of Inside the Creative Spirit. You're an awesome guest, and I'm so happy that we got to share this moment.
Thanks for having me.